And as Dr. King stated, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. The Quad Cities Interfaith Summer of Action Group was formed in the wake of this summer social unrest stemming from brutal treatment of people of color by law enforcement. The issues at hand are not isolated to these incidences, but are symptoms of greater systematic social issues where people of color are treated as less than. As a group, we decided to address the school-to-prison pipeline, which has plagued families and our communities. Police officers in our schools, or SROs, have become common in recent decades in response to school shootings. We are focusing on the role of SROs in our schools in an effort to limit direct referral of our youth to the juvenile justice system, with the intention of providing more resources to support and rehabilitate students to minimize the effects of early indoctrination into the system. Thanks, John.
Thank you very much, John. Moving on to our next speaker, we have, let's see here, we have Bailey, who's going to share some data with us. Bailey?
Hi, my name is Bailey Nelson. I am formerly a Davenport middle school science teacher, and I am currently in graduate school getting my master's in education policy. So let me pull this up. Could you make me the host? Thank you. Thank you. All right, so I'm just going to go over some data in regards to the country, and then we're also going to talk about Iowa. So when we talk about the school to prison pipeline, this is referring to those systemic,
each other. You can be everybody but me.
Those systemic policies and practices that push children, especially our students of color, out of schools and into these juvenile and criminal justice systems. So school-based arrests double the odds that students will drop out of school. When we combine that with court appearances, that quadruples the odds of students dropping out. So if we look at the mental health resources in the country, you see we have many students in schools with police officers, but without those important mental health resources. So a total of 14 million students are in schools with police, but no counselor, nurse, psychologist, or social worker. So now if we look at Iowa, it is recommended that there be one counselor for every 250 students. Iowa currently has one counselor for every 378 students. So we're not too far away from that 250 mark, but we're still not there yet. And then if you go down to the social workers, again, it is recommended that there be one social worker for every 250 students. And Iowa has one social worker for every 8,973 students.
1 second, Bailey. Could everyone please mute their mics? Thank you.
Sorry, I was kind of trying to mute people as I heard stuff, but okay. So, and then schools with police officers reported 3.5 times as many arrests as schools without police. And then when you combine that with student offenses and school-based arrests, that increases by 400%. And so an argument that's often made is that school resource officers increase the safety for students. However, even students who do have a positive view of these SROs, they do not see the school resource officers as improving the safety. In fact, a lot of students view them as decreasing the safety in the schools. So the Iowa school arrests by demographics, the asterisk there states that we are a top 10 state. So we have one of the highest percentages of students in that demographic being arrested in schools. So as you see, students with disabilities, our Black students, and our Pacific Islander students are those top 3 demographics. But all students except students without disabilities, we are a top 10 state for arresting those students in schools. And it's also important to note that Iowa is 90% white, yet Black students are at the highest risk of being arrested. If we talk about boys of color with disabilities in Iowa, Black boys with disabilities are 35 times more likely to be arrested than the average student in Iowa without a disability. Latino boys are 8 times as likely to be arrested compared to a student without a disability. And then we have Native American boys are 30 times more likely to be arrested compared to a student without a disability in Iowa. And then a statistic that at least I've been seeing going around lately is that Black girls in Iowa are 9 times more likely to be arrested than white girls in schools. We have one of the worst statistics in the country. So there's one other state that has a higher statistic than us, and that is West Virginia. So we are one of the worst in the state for that demographics. And then we can also get into the other demographics for school arrests for girls in Iowa. And again, you see Black girls, Native American girls, and Hawaiian and Pacific Islander girls are the top demographics being arrested or at risk of being arrested in our schools. And then just to conclude this, we did want to just clarify that we are not trying to eliminate safety and those procedures in our schools. We want to keep those security guards in our schools due to the fact that they cannot criminalize our students, they cannot arrest our students, and they're not armed. So we don't want to get rid of those safety procedures. We do, however, want to get rid of any factors that contribute to the school to prison pipeline. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bailey. And now moving on, we do have, we were supposed to have Yenna Balakiani from Black Lives Matter Iowa speak, but unfortunately she could not join us this evening. But I do believe she has sent in a statement, and Tess is going to read that for us.
Hello, my name is Tess Farmer. I'm working with Quad City Interfaith, and I'll be reading a statement from Yenna on behalf of Black Lives Matter of Iowa. When it comes to our children, it is only fair to assume that all of us want our children to be in environments where they feel secure, safe, and seen for their skills, gifts, and talents. It's heartbreaking, however, to see statistics that tell us otherwise, especially in environments that predominantly service Black and Brown children, and those in positions of power and making decisions are more likely to be non-Black and non-Brown. The question of removing SROs in the school system isn't about the SROs themselves as people. It is about the role that uplifts and contributes to the systemic injustices that already exist within the American school system. Police and police resources do not belong in any school setting and should be removed to further protect and support the health and wellness of all students, particularly Black and Brown students who are more at risk for having their behavior criminalized when police officers are present in schools. If you search school resource officer brutality, you will find the consequence of having these roles in schools. Actual research data shows that the increased presence of any law enforcement or their resources does not make any school safer. Instead, SROs reinforce the criminalization of young Black and Brown youth and serve as a key component that contributes to the school to prison pipeline. Research has shown over and over that Black and Brown students are more likely to be suspended, disciplined, and arrested in schools where SROs are present. And to make it clear, this is not because Black and Brown children are more likely to cause trouble. It is because Black and Brown students have a focused gaze on them by administration and SROs. Racial biases and prejudice encourage this gaze, where Black and Brown children are expected to act out of context. And the SROs are assigned to schools and the SROs assigned to the schools are not equipped with necessary and specialized training on adolescent development, racial and cultural equity, and de-escalation strategies for students leaving them to harm students instead of help. Schools are for learning. There are places where children go and mold their minds and invest in the persons they could become. No child should have to be greeted by an officer when they enter the school setting. By having SROs present, they are teaching our children that they are dangerous and should be controlled. When Black and brown people are still experiencing racism in school systems and stereotyped to be criminals and drug addicts simply because of the color of their skin or the zip code they live in, when we allow SROs to be the first thing they are greeted with when they enter school or when they get in trouble for behaviors white students get away with, we are intentionally and consciously telling them that they are criminals, and controlling them is a priority instead of their mental well-being, their safety, and security. Black and brown children and their parents are telling you that SROs are not good. They are appealing to you because they believe you care and can protect them. So if you want to protect our students, especially Black and brown students who are disproportionately affected by the presence of SROs in schools, we have to start believing them when they say they are in danger. Believe our students. Get SROs out of schools and invest that money into social workers and counselors that are equipped and trained to work with our students and their families. Thank you.
Thank you, Tess, for reading that statement. Moving on, we are moving to the student testimony portion, and the first we are going to start with a few members of the Quad Cities Youth Advisory Council. I believe Kamara is going to be the first one.
Hello? Yeah.
All right, floor is yours, Kamara.
Hi, my name is Kamara Sacco, and I am 16 years old. I am a co-founder of the Quad Cities Youth Advisory Council and currently a student at Rock Island High School. And as a student, I've witnessed many altercations with students throughout the years, but rarely, if ever, have I seen one be solved by an SRO. It's been my experience that with SROs, they either fail to do their job or take it too far. Some examples being seeing a fight break out between students and only seeing teachers intervene, knowing there are SROs in the building, or on the other hand, seeing them abuse their authority. I witnessed this at a very young age. When I was in the 3rd grade, I had a classmate who suffered from ADHD and, like me, was a person of color. The day the incident took place, we had a substitute teacher that wasn't familiar with the student and did not understand that he needed special attention. After the student failed to follow directions and continued talking when being told to be quiet, an SRO was called to the classroom. Rather than take the time to address the student's needs, the SRO immediately went to force and tried to take the student out of the classroom. This led to the student retaliating in violence and creating a situation that was initially a student failing to stop talking. Chairs were thrown and students were put into more danger. In the end, the SRO ultimately pinned down the student and dragged him out of the classroom screaming. Witnessing this incident, I never understood why the officer used force first when I've seen him respond calmer to other students. At the time, I didn't understand that I went to a predominantly white school and that this led me to realize that I needed to make sure I wasn't perceived as a threat, being some of the only people of color in the school. Still being in the 3rd grade, I held on to this memory, and this affected the way I presented myself to people for the rest of my life, making sure I talked calm and making sure I wasn't perceived as aggressive or loud or being mean. This is just one example of how not only did a minority with a disability receive a harsher punishment, but how SRO affected a student's psychological needs. So hearing my story, I ask that you rethink the situation and understand that we need counselors trained to handle situations involving students at an impressionable age. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your story, Kamara. I believe next we have Carlos.
Yep. Hello, my name is Carlos Martinez Concha. I'm 16. I am a junior at United Township High School, and I am also one of the co-founders of the Quad Cities Youth Advisory Council. The reason I feel like SROs shouldn't be in school is because now they're more of an authoritarian figure instead of offering any actual protection. Like during the last couple of years at UT, I've witnessed some fights, and the fights have almost never been stopped by an officer instead administrators. And we also had an issue, I think last year, where an officer at our school was also arrested for possession of child pornography and criminal sexual assault. So the trust that we had with officers at school, like obviously it went gone. We don't even see the officers at the same way we did before. They're mainly just there to try, I guess, yeah, like I said before, an authoritarian figure. Sorry. When I first heard about that, I just felt sick to my stomach. This was a man who was in our schools and during middle school and all the way up to UT. It was just disgusting and sickening to our stomach. And I feel like since I'm a male Latino, I am more targeted than my white counterparts. Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you, Carlos. And Omnia, I believe, is the last from the Quad Cities Youth Advisory Council.
Good evening. My name is Omnia Saleh. I am the co-founder of QCYAC. And I believe we shouldn't have SROs in schools because they harm students more than help. It puts our Black and Brown students, friends, and kids at risk. This is a risk I'm not willing to take, and you shouldn't either. Nationally, SROs don't have the general training requirement, so the results in how they handle students will strongly vary from state to state. According to the HealthySchoolsCampaign.org, Black and Latinx students are more likely to be disciplined, suspended, and arrested around a police officer than white students. In Iowa, girls are 9 times more likely to be arrested than their white counterparts, and Black students are 2.3 times more likely to get a referral or be arrested compared to their white counterparts. Despite the high number of Black students being incarcerated, Black students make up 15% of the enrolled at school, yet 33% of them are arrested. On the other hand, white students make up 50% of the enrolled, and only 34% of them get arrested. This is because SROs are obviously targeting students of color and minorities in general. Other schools have taken action against this, such as school districts in Seattle and Washington. They removed SROs from their schools since the staff and students said it prohibited them from feeling safe in their school environment, and they would feel more comfortable without one. When an SRO is around, 70% of the time, they are not wearing a body camera. If something were to happen between a student and an SRO officer that doesn't have a body camera, it could be hard to distinguish what's happening, what's being said, and what tone it is conveyed in when using the school's cameras. 1.7 million students are in schools with cops but no counselors. 3 million students are in schools with cops but no nurses. 6 million students are in schools with cops but no psychologists. And 10 million students are in schools with cops but no social workers. Since we're putting most of our money into cops, but not actual people that can help with the trauma that they give our friends and kids, what is the point? Personally, being a young Black Muslim woman, I do not feel safe. I often get side looks and dirty looks in public by law enforcement. So when they're implemented into my school and around my Black friends, I just feel helpless, honestly. School should be me and my friends' safe escape from cops and fear. But it just follows us right into the building like a shadow lingering over our heads. I just wish schools would remove them because Black and Brown students are constantly being targeted, harassed, and intimidated by them. So why are they still here? Thank you. And here, over the weekend, a couple of days ago, I took a poll on Instagram, and 83% of students said they did not feel safe around SROs, and 70% said they do feel safe. I also got some replies from students. One student said that she saw a cop dislocate a girl's shoulder while trying to break up a fight. And that's just completely unacceptable, no matter what happened that day. And somebody, can you please go down? And the one that caught my eye was one that said, my school is already a dangerous place. Law enforcement will probably make it worse by giving students who provoke violence a reason to rebel against the system. And then I had one message that said, police in schools traumatize students, especially students of color, and contributing to the criminalization of students. The police do not belong in schools, especially if they're armed. They should be out there helping and protect the community, but their ego got to their heads. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Omnia. And now we moving on with the student testimony. I believe we have Chloe Shomo.
Hi, my name is Chloe Shomo. I am a junior at Rock Island High School, and currently I am a class valedictorian. I'm also part of a feminist group at Rock Island High School. So I believe that we can all agree that the reason SROs were first put into our schools was for student safety. We've been looking at statistics in this past meeting. We can see that SROs don't always provide a safe environment for students. And my administration hasn't shown that they've looked at these statistics or other statistics and proven that SROs actually make school a safer place. And I feel like the statistics that show that SROs don't treat Black and Brown students and as well as disabled students fairly was completely ignored by my administration, because we still have officers in our schools while these statistics exist. Secondly, I believe that I have been done a disservice by my school, because my school has never asked me whether or not I personally feel safe with officers in my school, and the answer is no. And so I think the first step to deciding if we want police officers in our school is first educating ourselves on these statistics and seeing if it is a safe place for Black and Brown students as well as disabled students. And secondly, asking all students whether or not they personally feel safe. And as we've seen, most students don't feel safe with SROs, and I don't believe they should because of what we've seen. And that's all I want to say. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Chloe. Moving on, we do have Shannon McNeil with the Black Lives Matter support group of the Quad Cities. Shannon?
Hello. Yes, I am Shannon McNeil. I use the pronouns she, her, hers, and I am the founder of the BLM support groups. I'm going to speak on behalf of the entire group. They could not be here, but just so you know that it's not just from my perspective. If I'm looking off, it's because I'm looking at the notes on my phone. But one of the major things as to why we're calling for the removal of SROs is because we are learning that students of color, if their safe space is not at home, it's at school. And knowing that you have police officers in your schools or SROs in your schools is actually very traumatizing and traumatic, because you always have too much of a presence of police in your community at home. So they carry that along with them. That's from exact testimonies of some of our group leaders. Another reason why we're calling for the removal of SROs is because the only thing that they've been effective at is increasing the school to prison pipeline, where these minor incidences are being over-disciplined and which lead to a criminal record and a loss of opportunities. So we really don't believe that there's a point in having SROs, because they don't really prevent problems. They're there to stop what's happening in that moment. So something is already happening beforehand. And basically, if we fund for more counselors and give these students more resources, then they'll have more opportunity to and advice to learn how to deal with these problems that they're having from a more caring standpoint. So the BLM support groups is going to be having an event on the 27th that will go into more detail at 7 p.m. about the effects on the Black community with the school to prison pipeline. If any of you are interested in doing that, my email is shanmcneil@outlook.com. I made a Facebook event page as well. But yes, we are all for the removal of SROs. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much, Shannon. And I do believe that concludes the student testimony portion. And we will be moving on to the parent testimony portion, and we'll open that up with Ricky Terrell.
Hi, I'm Mariki. I have a student, a 12-year-old boy. He goes to Wood Intermediate here in Davenport. He also used to go to school over on the Illinois side as well. So he has experience both with counselors and SROs. I feel like with the counselors, they have, it was more of a benefit for the kids. My son's also a BD student at the school, so I feel like he is or will be targeted more. And he is a Black or brown student as well. With the counselors at school, I feel like whenever he would get in trouble or in a situation, the counselors were able to handle it more. At school now here in Davenport, I'm called a lot. He says a lot, or just sit home for the rest of the day. They'll call me an hour after he's been to school, so he's missing all that time in school and things like that. And then with all the other things going on with the world in the world today, with police officers killing people in the world and things like that, I don't think that already doesn't build good relationships with kids growing up seeing that. So I think kids already are afraid to go to police officers and law enforcement. So, yeah. So I feel like I just like the counselors are better of a benefit for the kids. They're not, I feel like the kids are more taking to the counselors than they are to the police officers. Yeah, that's all I have to say.
All right. Thank you, Mariki. We are going to move on now to teacher testimony. And to open that up, we'll recognize Bailey Nelson. Go ahead, Bailey.
Hi, so like I said earlier, my name is Bailey Nelson. Last year, I was a middle school science teacher for the Davenport Community School District, and I am currently in graduate school obtaining my master's degree in education policy. So there has been a lot of debate and conversations in regard to this issue of school resource officers, especially within the teaching community and with teachers in the Davenport Community School District. However, these alarming statistics that we've been talking about today, especially in Iowa, is a huge indicator that we need to, it's time for us to follow suit of these other large school districts like St. Paul, Minneapolis, Oakland, and San Francisco. As a teacher, it's often easy to view these types of controversial issues through a single lens, especially when teachers, including myself, would see a positive relationship between students and police officers in schools. However, this is a much bigger issue, and it's a much bigger systemic issue that surrounds SROs and the lack of mental health resources in our schools. So I'm in no way patronizing or calling out specific school resource officers within our district. I am, however, stressing that our students deserve more mental health resources and the elimination of any contributors to the school to prison pipeline, which we have seen is SROs. One argument I often hear in support of SROs is the safety of our schools and students. However, even students who have a positive view of their SROs do not view them as increasing our school safety. In fact, a lot of students, as we've heard from the student testimonies, view them as decreasing our school safety. The most argued point I hear is that school resource officers are mentors to our students. However, if you look at the job description of our school resource officers in Davenport, this is nowhere in their job description. We do not need armed officers in our hallways in order to have mentors in our schools. There are no statistics to back up these arguments that continue to be made. McClellan, who is part of the NAACP Legal Defense and Education Fund, made an extremely valid point in regards to these mentors. She stated that when educators are talking about, I like our police officer, he's a great mentor to the kids, the reality is that our schools are understaffed and our kids are so desperate for mentors that we're using this resource to fill the gap when it does not require a police officer to do these things. So rather than fund more social workers, counselors, psychologists, our district is looking to fund more of these SRO positions, which have statistically shown to contribute to the school to prison pipeline. So as a teacher, I believe that our students, our families, and our community deserves better. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bailey. And moving on to our next teacher testimony, we have John Arnold.
Hey guys, I'm a science teacher at Davenport West, and so in regards to SROs, I just want to say we do have some outstanding individuals in some of these roles of SRO, but we can't understate the importance of the psychological effects the SROs and the constant police presence in our communities and schools create for our students and youth. So national and state data consistently show their disproportionality of arrests within schools and with SROs present. And the issues of SROs has been discussed recently, in the last month at a Davenport school board meeting. And we've not seen the data from the district or police force that was requested by the board. So we definitely need more information. We need more support from the infrastructure here to understand our local needs and what's happening with our students. So we definitely, that data will help us better understand how our students are entering the juvenile justice system. So our youth simply deserve better. The question is, are we making decisions to support public perception or what's in the best interest of our students? So continuing to do the same thing but expecting different results, it's simply not going to cut it. And we need to make a concerted effort, provide more opportunities, more resources, in an effort to create school culture that's going to foster community and growth and not alienation. So thank you.
Thank you very much, John. And now we are going to recognize Professor of Criminology from St. Ambrose University, Grant Tijin, or Tijin.
Hello. Hi. Tijin, like two drinks, like tea and gin, right?
Yeah, I knew that. They told me that, and I still got it wrong. I'm sorry about that.
That's all right. It's cool. It's cool. It's quite okay. Hello, everybody. So, Amber, did you make me the administrator? Oh, I'm host. Okay, good. I'm going to pull up a letter I wrote to Mayor Mattson about this issue here, if you'll give me 1 second here. Okay. Can everyone see that? Oh, good, good. Okay. Everybody has been, talking a lot of research and a lot of statistics, and I'm glad to see that, right? And you guys have been bringing a lot of, what I presented to the mayor, actually. This is, well documented. This is strongly supported by a lot of studies out there that look at the efficacy, of school resource officers. There's a lot of research that's either inconclusive, as in it doesn't show a positive or a negative benefit, or there needs to be more research done. And there's a lot of research that shows that they're not effective. And then the only research that does demonstrate some kind of effectiveness are just opinion surveys that ask students whether they feel more or less safe. And of course, those surveys, the results of those are broken down on racial lines, right? White students feel more safe. Black and Hispanic students feel less safe often, right? So there's a lot of research out there that, and it doesn't support them. It's either inconclusive or, demonstrates that they do not make schools safer, for example, right? And I won't go through and rehash all of it because you guys did a good job of doing that already. But I just wanted to show you that I had a conversation. I'm on the Juvenile Justice Coalition of the Quad Cities, and I've been on that committee for 2 or 3 years, and I'm on the board of directors for Progressive Action for the Common Good. So that's how I got involved with that. But I do research on reintegration of formerly incarcerated people in society and how to make the reintegration process more successful through higher education, right? I guess how I tie into all this is, I'm a professor, but I'm also formerly incarcerated, right? So at one point in my life, I had some very direct contact with the criminal justice system. So that's how I, tie in to, my reasons why I study criminology, criminal justice. And I have some, very direct interest in keeping people out of the criminal justice system and out of the correctional system. And I think effective juvenile justice policies are one of the most powerful ways to do that, right? So obviously I have a very vested interest in stopping the school to prison pipeline. And I see the school resource officer phenomena as feeding directly into that pipeline. And I told the mayor that in a discussion when he came to the one of our Juvenile Justice Coalition meetings. And I said, I don't think there should be a law enforcement presence in schools. I said there, of course, there could be security and safety measures, and that's good and well. But this is not an effective practice. It just adds to this criminogenic component. It criminalizes people, and it doesn't function to further the process of education, right? And I sent him this email and I gave alternatives. Of course, I didn't just want to say, here's a whole bunch of research that shows that SROs are bad and offer no solutions. So I said, here are some alternatives to SROs, and some of you have already stated some of these too. But social workers in schools, I said more mental health counseling in schools. I said more restorative justice programs in schools, perhaps more transformative justice programs. Evidence-based practices, that work, and there are many out there. But we should, if there, ignore them in favor of like politically popular alternatives or community, popular alternatives. Then that the public may like but aren't effective, then that may negatively impact certain groups, right? While privileging other groups, right? Thus, by ignoring evidence-based best practices, we're literally perpetuating the system of inequalities, right, that impact people on a number of different factors, whether on economic class, on racial, socialized concepts of race, socially constructed is what I meant, socially constructed concepts of race. Looking at evidence-based best practices and thinking about these, and advocating for implementing them is a powerful tool to destroy or limit or reduce the school to prison pipeline. And then restructure society. Of course, I'm a sociologist, so I went big, and I said in order to stop these problems, we need to completely restructure society, right? To eliminate the social structural inequalities which lead to problems in certain schools and versus others, right? Where we all know that public school system is unequal in the United States, right? It perpetuates inequality. Some schools receive more funding based on tax base than do others, and so on and so forth. So equalizing of those social constructs, creating more job opportunities, more social welfare programs, a multitude of different factors that could restructure society to redistribute wealth more equally amongst all members of society, right? Because right now we're at record levels of wealth-based inequality in the United States, right? Which powerfully feeds into these structures. Eliminating the structures that perpetuate racism, right? Whether institutionalized racism or
let me tell you how to ball
overt racism. Lots of things here, right? Lots of powerful ideas. But I can't even touch the tip of the iceberg here. But I don't want to go off on a sociology lecture because I always kind of start doing that. But just to give you some examples of some alternatives, right? And I tried to send this to to the mayor. This was on the 16th of July, maybe, and I haven't heard any response to it. It was suggested that I be on a panel at one of the city council meetings, and I was passed over for being on that panel. And so I'm trying to put in some work here on this process. I'm trying to speak out and say that school resource officers are not evidence-based good policy or practice, and that we should look at alternatives in regards to that. And without going on and on, which I could in regards to this process, I will turn it back over. So thank you for having me at this meeting.
Thank you very much, Professor. That was a lot of wonderful information. Now we are moving on to the open discussion portion of the evening. So the way we're going to do this here, if you have a comment, if you'd like to share your own story, if you have a question for any of the speakers, please go to the little more tab here, the three dots, and you can raise your hand. And if you raise your hand in there, we will work our way through anybody who would like a chance to say something or ask any questions. And we'll move through everybody who would like to speak. We would like to request, if you would like to say something, please keep to 2 to 3 minutes, your comments to 2 to 3 minutes, so we can make sure that we have enough time to get everybody in before the end of the meeting. So let's see here. Is anybody raising their hand here? I am not seeing anybody who has raised their hand just yet. All right, I guess we'll go give it a quick call out. Going once, going twice. Anybody have anything they would like to ask or a story they would like to tell? All right, without anybody saying anything, we can move on to the final portion on the agenda, and that is actually a video from Ella. She was unfortunately unable to make it this evening, but Amber does have a video from her. We've got no volume there, Amber.
My name is Ella Miller, and I'm a rising senior at Davenport Central High School. The case for removing police officers from Davenport Community Schools could not be more clear-cut. As we, the Summer of Social Change group based out of Quad Cities Interfaith, have discovered, schools that employ more school-based health professionals see many benefits, such as improved attendance rates, lower rates of suspension and disciplinary incidents, lower rates of expulsion, improved academic achievement, improved graduation rates, and finally, improved school safety. Kids in schools without police officers are simply better off. The statistics out of Iowa and Scott County tell a particularly awful story. In the state of Iowa, the student-to-counselor ratio is 378 to 1, when the recommended ratio is 250 to 1. The student-to-social worker ratio is 8,973 to 1, when the recommended ratio is, again, 250 to 1. Davenport children do not need policing. We need access to counselors when we need them. We need consistent mental health services in our schools. We need adults in our lives who are trained to listen to us when we have mental health or social needs, not just handcuff us and perpetuate the school-to-prison pipeline. Additionally, we must not ignore the racial disparity that is so deeply woven into this issue. In Iowa, it is estimated that 125 out of 10,000 Black students were subject to a school arrest, 80 out of 10,000 Pacific Islander students, 51 out of 10,000 Indigenous students, 31 out of 10,000 white students, 22 out of 10,000 Latinx students, and 13 out of 10,000 Asian students. Having a disability also puts you at a much higher risk of being arrested at school, with 57 out of 10,000 children with disabilities being arrested in school, compared to 8 out of 10,000 of their non-disabled classmates. With this in mind, I ask the Davenport Community School District, for the good of their students of color and their disabled students, remove school resource officers from our school district and replace them with mental health professionals. Additionally, I would like to invite everyone on this call to join us on the 24th as we go in front of the school board and ask for the replacement of SROs. Or if you can't make it, to please share why you would like to see SROs replaced. Thank you to everyone who is here this evening, and have a wonderful night.
Well, thank you very much, everyone. That is all we've got. I'm going to kick it over to Amber to close out the meeting.
Thank you, John, and thank you everyone for attending. I just wanted to add on to what Ella was saying. Tomorrow, the city council will also be discussing this or voting on this. I'm not quite sure, but I know that it was that they had discussed it with the mayor, had put a request in to continue funding school resource officers. After all that we heard tonight, I personally do not want my tax dollars to go to criminalizing my daughter. I'm not okay with that, and I'm not okay with putting my child at 9 times higher risk of being arrested than what I was. And I don't want my tax dollars to pay for that. So if everybody wants to join into that city council meeting tomorrow, that's also another way that we can try to, stop and to replace these SROs. But as for this group and what our goal is, we do want to be heard at by the school board, because they are the ones who decide in regards to SROs. As John talked about, they had a school board meeting about a month ago, but only people who were in favor of SROs attended. So we need to make sure that, not attended, spoke. So we need to make sure that people who are, who believe that school resource officers need to be replaced, that our voices are heard by the school board. So that is why we're going to be going Monday, the 24th. When I called, they said that they can't put us on the agenda or reserve a certain amount of time for us, but we can go 15 minutes early, sign up, and we can get 2 minutes to speak. If you feel like you need more than 2 minutes, you can request additional time. So that's our plan, is to go Monday and find out and just sign up to speak there.
Hey, Amber, there were a couple of things brought up in chat. One, Leslie would like to know what time at City Hall, I'm assuming for tomorrow's meeting. And then Judith Lee also said she would like to speak.
Okay. Tomorrow's meeting at City Hall is at 5:30. And for those of you who do not want to come in to the school board meeting, I'm going to call tomorrow and find out if there's a way we can attend virtually. Check out Quad Cities Interfaith's Facebook page. I will post that information. Otherwise, the location for the school board meeting is at 6 o'clock at 1702 North Main Street in Davenport on the second floor. So if you want to speak at that or you want to attend, you can email me or you can just show up and meet there. So I will open the floor up to our city alderman,
Judith Lee, 8th Ward.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I just want to clarify that we had our city council meeting last week on Wednesday, and that is where we took a vote. There is nothing on the agenda this week for SROs. You are welcome to come and speak at the end of the committee of the whole meeting on Wednesday. And you can speak on SROs. And let me explain a little bit about what we did last week. It's set up so the committee of the whole has, it's more discussion, and then we vote on things generally at the city council meetings next week. So we had a discussion at the committee of the whole meeting the week before, and I brought up some questions. I had a meeting with the mayor and the chief of police after I brought up some questions. I've also done a lot of research on SROs and spoken to a couple of professors. And then last week at the meeting, I put up, and Patrick put up an amendment to the decision, to the vote that it would have to come back, that whatever the results were of this task force would have to come back before City Council for a vote on whether we approve it or not. So that's a start. That was an amendment to the original resolution. The other thing I did was I put together and read into the record at that meeting approximately 8 or 9 things that I wanted the task force to consider. And then I wrote it down and sent it in an email to the folks that are going to be on the task force from the city, which is the mayor, the chief of police, and alderman, J.J. Condon, and there's one other I can't think of right now. And I also sent those copies. There's one to Alexandra Demoti, and there was one to the just the general PACG email address. So I'm just saying that the task force is active. It might be helpful if you wanted to come and speak, but there will not be a formal agenda SRO item, and there will not be a vote on Wednesday. But
when is that task force expected to have their results back to you?
I do not know, to be perfectly honest. I'm hoping, and what I asked for in my email was take the time to do it right, to define the tasks, what I call the rules of engagement, and how it's going to differ between intermediate students and high school students, if they're going to be in the schools. I had very specific items that I want them to consider. I'm hoping with school opening September 8th instead of next week, that they will take the time to have the discussions they need and do it right. But you can certainly ask the mayor when he expects the results to come out. Or you can ask the president of the school district, the school board, when you go next week, because I believe Dan Gosa is also on the task force.
Thank you. All right. So can you tell us who is on that task force? Is it made up of community members? Is like a representative of Black Lives Matter on there? Or is it who's on that task force?
There are 2 parents. I'm trying to think now, because I don't have the papers in front of me. I should, I guess. There's the mayor, the chief of police, an alderman, school superintendent. I believe the president of the Davenport School Board. I said 2 parents. And there may be 1 or 2 others. I just can't remember. I apologize.
Are there any people of color on that task force?
I have no idea on that one. I just, I was not on the task force. I just took it on myself to become more informed and then ask specific questions as opposed to saying we just need more data.
Okay. Do you know who we could talk to about ensuring that there's people of color on that task force?
If I were you, I would either talk to the school superintendent who's on there, or the mayor, or the president of the school board.
Okay.
That's who I would recommend.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Mm-hmm. All right, John, you want to close us out?
Sure thing. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming to the town hall this evening. As we've mentioned several times, and I believe was shared in the chat, if you support what we're doing here, please show up to the school board meeting on the 24th, 6 p.m. That is, the location is the Jim Hester Boardroom, 2nd floor, Achievement Service Center, the address 1702 North Main Street, Davenport. And I believe Amber is going to look for a way to attend that digitally, and we'll post that on the QCI Facebook page for you. So again, thank you all very much for attending this evening. I think we had a wonderful meeting. A lot of great information was shared, and I think this is a wonderful launching off point. Hope to see everybody Monday at the meeting.
Thank you. And if you were on at 5:30, please stay for a brief evaluation. we'll let everybody kind of log off and then we'll do our evaluation. Thanks, everyone.